We're live with Dr. J. Mitchell Perry. Today's Q&A. And here's Dr. J. Mitchell Perry.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to Tuesday. I remember when I was becoming Dr. Perry with my schooling, I had a most magnificent professor who was clearly on his own flight. I really liked him, and we would come in on Thursday nights for the class and hear a bunch of budding clinicians, and he would do this. He would say, "Welcome to Thursday." And now we got a quite interesting opportunity to hear from you on this exam. He was a hysterical guy. So when I said, welcome to Tuesday, that's what he used to say all the time. Very, very funny guy, and I really liked him a lot. Okay, so today is Tuesday, which means we're going to do Q&A, Ask Dr. Perry. And we've gotten a bunch of questions that have been submitted to us. And the way this works, if this is your first time tuning in to live, you can listen to this, certainly watch it, and you may have some comments as we go along, or you may have some additional questions you may want to ask. Feel free to fill them in, and I can assure you my producer, Mike. Mike, are you there still, sir?
Yep, right here, Dr. Perry.
I like it that you're there because, as you know, I have problems with abandonment. So, Mike will put the question or the comment up, and we're very much looking forward to hearing from you again. We are here on Tuesday mornings with Q&A, and we're here on Friday mornings. We had a really good turnout for last Friday when we did that presentation. It was called Embrace the Obvious, Practice Common Sense. And we got, Mike, in excess of 330 people or something attending. So I think that's particularly good. So now we're into Q&A. Feel free to let us know what's on your mind. And Mike, let's proceed with the questions.
Our first question. My husband and I are both working from home. We don't have any children, and it seems that we're getting bored and impatient with one another. What are some ways that we can become closer during the stay-at-home order?
Well, first off, that is very, very real. It does happen with many couples that you get bored or irritated with each other, in part because most couples are just human beings and they want attention. They want some kind of emotional reinforcement. They want some kind of fun. They want something to happen. And yet most couples very infrequently think about what they can do first. They most of the time think about what they want their partner to do first. So my recommendation is, if you're getting bored and cranky with each other, to what extent are you thinking about, well, what could we do with each other that is quite different from what we've done? What could we do for each other that is quite different from how we generally behave? The reality is that if you've heard my material over time, you know that I'm a huge fan of make the first move, be proactive, consider something, talk about it, reach agreement, improvise, adapt, and somehow or another figure out a way to restore whatever it is you may want. So, 1, make sure you have ongoing conversations with each other. 2, think about stuff that might be fun. Make a series of initiatives or a series of ideas. Let's learn to play chess. Let's learn a language. Let's dance outside and put on our favorite song. Let's clean out the house. Let's do a project together. I mean, if you think about all the things you could do, it's just really about getting off your backside and beginning to do it. So the more you write down a series of activities that you could do, and then you actually get started, you're much less likely to find each other irritating because you're being proactive as opposed to reactive. And notice the more you react, the more you're going to pull your finger at it and shoot it at your spouse because you think your spouse ought to be behaving differently, when really, if you got more control over your own behavior, you change your behavior first. So that's generally the way to do it. Moreover, I always recommend that you spend more time reinforcing each other rather than tolerating or criticizing each other. So that could be common sense, Mike. What are your thoughts?
Very good, Dr. Perry. Let's go to the next question.
Go.
My daughter lives in Texas. She tells me that she and her friends have resumed going out to bars and restaurants without social distancing and wearing masks. I want to respect her independence, and yet I don't agree with her behavior right now. What should I do?
Well, I'm going to guess if my daughter lives in Texas, I'm going to guess she is either close to being an adult or she's actually an adult. And therefore, if you are the parent and you are looking at the daughter being what you consider to be unwise and perhaps irresponsible about avoiding masks and social distancing, you do know that because you're probably older, wiser, brighter, shinier, and you've learned some of the lessons of life the hard way, you certainly know that without a mask and without social distancing, your daughter could be playing with fire. So my recommendation is to remember your daughter gets to make her own choices. And if she does get to make her own choices, rather than pulling your finger out and belly aching at her, don't do this, don't do this. How many times do I have to tell you? Around which you're going to get a nice pushback and a nice irritation and impatience with you. My recommendation is simply saying, honey, what are your thoughts about wearing a mask regularly and making sure you practice social distancing? If you ask her a question about it, as opposed to give her an order or what appears to be criticism, you're going to perhaps get her attention a little more effectively. On the other hand, I do encourage you to remember that most lessons are learned the hard way. Translated, life is about learning lessons, and lessons will be repeated until they are learned. So if your daughter wants to play with fire and convince herself that she's going to be fine and therefore less likely to get infected, she might have to learn that stuff the hard way. And sometimes that lesson is really severe. So if you want your daughter to behave more responsibly, ask her more questions rather than telling her more answers. The more questions you ask that appear to be other than accusatories, the more likely she's going to consider the nature of the wisdom as opposed to reject your suggestions if your suggestions sound like you're belly aching at her. Mike, next.
Dr. Perry, some people say this is an amplifier. The stay-at-home order is an amplifier of good things and bad things in our relationships. Can you explain that in more detail?
Yes, I can. Would you say, Mike, that when you are in some kind of an emotional, intense experience, that emotional, intense experience can either amplify the good outcomes or it can amplify the bad ones? Would you say that's true?
For sure. Yeah.
Sure. So could we say this is a new normal for us? We are just barely in, I'll say, what? Chapter 2 of a multi-chapter experience with respect to the pandemic. Everybody's an expert. Many experts disagree in terms of what's going to be happening going forward. And we can say with some degree of confidence, this is going to be a longer than shorter experience in terms of staying at home and in terms of masks, social distancing, recovering the economy, learning the lessons that we really have to be more responsible about taking care of our own lives, both financially and interpersonally. So my thoughts are the following. You, depending upon how you conduct yourself, can experience an amplifier, and therefore the relationships that you have with people at home are going to get worse because you get impatient, you get cranky, you get tired, you are bored, or you're waiting for some new program on television rather than turning off the television and doing something else that could be fun. So my recommendation is remember the degree to which this circumstance in COVID-19 is one that is very likely to be an amplifier. Remember, you get to choose, do you want the amplification to be reflecting something that's bad, so you get cranky and impatient and you start snapping at each other and you become critical and you say things that you regret? Do you really want to amplify that experience? Or do you want to say, okay, what could we do with each other? What could we do with the family? How could we take better care of ourselves? And how could we have more fun? The reality is how the amplifier goes, either good outcomes, bad outcomes, is really within your control a lot more than you think. And so therefore, remember, if life is going great, you're doing that. If life stinks, you probably did that too to some degree. And if life is a whole new level of boring, beige, and underwhelming, you probably did that too. So take more responsibility to figure out what kind of outcomes you're looking for. And remember, what you focus on expands. Mike?
Our next question comes from Tom in Fillmore. He says, I'm finding we're getting more communication and intimacy. And is this normal? Talking about his relationship with his spouse.
Well, it's curious that people say we're getting more communication and better intimacy. And I'm wondering, Mike, if you're saying, or who's this, Tom in Fillmore? Is that who it is?
Correct.
If it's Tom, what I would say to you is when you say, is this normal? That therefore suggests that having more intimacy and more communication is something that concerns you. My thoughts are it can be normal. Certainly, there are many couples, many marriages, many families out there are really getting closer to their children, really getting closer to their spouse, one spouse, two spouse. The reality is the nature of being quarantined require that can really be good. It can be close, intimate, funny, caring, decidedly more enjoying the time together that ordinarily you would be avoiding. For example, what happens with a lot of parents when they are in quarantine, they actually do enjoy their children, where previously they were working all the time and unable to spend time with the kids. So remember, that's all your choice. And my thoughts are, please know there is a large population of people out there who are getting closer and enjoying the intimacy and really getting to know each other again. Is this normal? I would say it's often something that happens. And remember, normal is something you choose to do. Normal is essentially a function of ongoing kinds of habits. So if you're getting intimate and you're getting closer and you're enjoying things, my recommendation is capitalize on that and do a lot more of it. Remember, what you focus on expands. What you do can have an outcome that's pretty good if you're in charge of it, or how you react to a bad situation makes an outcome that's pretty bad. It's your choice.
Our next question comes from Deanne in Santa Barbara. She says, my parents are elderly and live several hours away. When I talk to them on the phone, they sound so depressed. Before the coronavirus, they were active and had a very full social life with lots of friends. Now mom tells me that dad sits in his chair all day and watches TV. Mom says he refuses to even go on a walk with her. I am concerned about my parents' well-being. What can I do?
Well, what I would say is frequent short contacts. One of the things you can do with your kids or with your parents is remember, if they are elderly, they're on the backside or they're in the sunset of their years. And they very often will feel some form of unfulfilled. They'll feel some form of lonely. They'll feel some form of estranged or isolated. And they have routinely had a series of habits with their friends, their social set, whatever it is, that helps them feel much more nurtured. If now they have to stay home or they're unable to affiliate with people the way they would like to because of the quarantine, then keep in mind that what you can do is have increasing frequency of contact with them. And my recommendation is, rather than getting upset and impatient with your parents, spend more time telling them how you love them, spend more time helping them to learn to laugh, spend more time asking them questions of what they might do with each other more, because it's entirely likely if the father in this case is watching television and being non-responsive, what he's doing is what a lot of guys do. He's going into his cave and he's hiding. Going into his cave and he's hiding. Translated, he's depressed. He feels sad. He feels uncomfortable. He feels unloved. So my recommendation is moms often will get crankier in a different form of depression, and dads will get cranky by virtue of going into their cave and hiding. So my recommendation is have more contact, frequent short visits, either in person, or no, not in person, because they're hours away, on the phone or on Zoom, just like this. And send them things to read, or ask them questions about movies, or suggest some movies they may want to watch, or ask them all kinds of things what they might find interesting. And remember, you got to be patient with them. And the reason you got to be patient with them is because they're creatures of habit. You'll notice that many elderly people determine the quality of their week or month directly proportional to their next doctor's visit. Lots of people who are older really get excited to go see the doctor, and they're concerned about what they're going to wear, because that's an opportunity to get out and have something that would be new. So the more you can create some affiliations, the more you can send them some gifts, some things to laugh about, the more you can just simply do more maintenance and be patient is going to help your parents a lot more than if you are now criticizing, or you're being impatient, or you're essentially trying to change them. For example, Mike, if you think about your parents, I presume they're both alive. Is that right?
My parents have both passed.
Oh, they're both passed. Okay.
Correct.
When they were, as have mine, when they were alive, did you ever try to fix your parents?
Indeed, I did.
And I did too. How successful were you at fixing your parents?
Very unsuccessful.
And I was brilliant. And I just completely thought, what's wrong with my mother? I'm unable to fix her.
Right. Right.
So my experience is most everybody spends all their time and energy trying to fix their spouse or their brother or their parents or sister or whoever it is. And that's just uphill and a colossal waste of time. So I recommend also to help you be patient when it comes to your own parents.
Talking about that, we have another question on that same topic, Dr.
Okay,
Perry.
sure.
James has the question talking about his spouse. He says, as a man, should I be trying to listen more and fix less with my wife? It seems counterintuitive.
Well, let's do this one. Mike, you are married, and you know a bunch of people who are married. Is that right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. In the marriages of either your own or marriages of people that you know, how often does it appear as if there's one person in the marriage who seems to be on the mission to fix the other person in the marriage?
It seems common.
Yes. And how well is that working for anybody?
I would say poorly.
Exactly. So my recommendation is as follows. More than half the time, it appears that in a marriage, the wife generally wants to fix the husband more than the other way around. Certainly, there are husbands out there that are on a mission to fix the wife, unless you think it's all one way. It's just that, would you say, Mike, you are familiar with many marriages where the wife has a need to fix the husband? Do you ever notice that?
Yes. And
Okay.
and I think the husband's trying to fix situations.
To be sure. Yeah, exactly right. So could we say generally, you've got more power over your own behavior than you have over your spouse's behavior? Yes? No?
100% yes.
Okay. So therefore, if the husband, James, is saying some form of, it might be a good idea for me to listen and just let my wife be my wife. The answer is yes. It's a great idea to listen and let my wife be my wife. Men generally have an impulse to want to solve it, fix it, and then go on to the next subject. Is that true, Mike?
Yes. Yes,
Okay.
it is.
So if men generally want to solve it and fix it, how often when the man listens to the wife and the wife says, I'm concerned about this or I'm concerned about that, how often does the man appear to say, well, then here's what you should do? Meaning, here's how you solve that. How often does a man
every time?
Yes. And how well does that work?
Poorly.
Exactly. Do you ever notice when a wife talks with a good girlfriend, do you ever notice they will talk about many subjects, many simultaneously? And either your wife or the girlfriend will say some form of, oh, yeah, that really bugs me too. Or that really is a problem. Uh-huh. And do they ever really solve it? No. Do they want to? No. Are they having a great time talking about it? The answer is yes. And so therefore, that's just one of the differences between men and women. So what I would say to you is, James, if your wife wants to talk about something, your first best bet is to do what she's always tried to get you to do. And that is listen. How often, Mike, do you hear women or wives say some form of, would you just listen to me?
Yeah, I think that's common.
Yeah. So my recommendation is, please just shut up, James, and listen to her. Oh, by the way, look interested. That would be helpful as well, because otherwise, the more you look like you're waiting for her to stop talking, the more insulted she becomes. So love what you can love, let the rest go, and listen some more. Yes.
Our next question, Dr. Perry, says this: I'm having trouble sleeping. I'm worried about my health. What might I try?
Oh boy. Well, first off, anxiety, which is happening with a whole bunch of people now for any number of reasons, is a sleep robber. So therefore, if you have trouble sleeping, it's entirely possible you're afraid or you're concerned or you're anxious or you're worried about money or you're worried about how you're going to cope, which means anxiety does often make sleeping worse. Now, here's some things for your consideration that could be common sense, and therefore infrequently do people do it because it's common sense. One thing you can do is take a warm bath. If you take a warm bath and have bubbles in it, because that's kind of fun with the bubbles, the reality is your body temperature is going to go up, which means it's increasingly likely that you will sleep better when you have a warm bath. Another thing you can do is you can take, have you ever heard the idea, Mike, about drink some warm milk? You ever heard that one?
I did. My mother used to serve me warm milk.
That's right. That's right. Now, warm milk has tryptophan in it, and therefore that can help you sleep. Another thing you can do is you can go to the store and get some melatonin. You've heard of melatonin. It kind of helps the body relax a bit. Melatonin is in pill form. You can get it in 5 milligrams or 10 milligrams. I would say if you have a sensitive system, just get 5 milligrams. Take one before you go to sleep. That can help as well. Another thing you can do is you can listen to very calming music before you turn the stereo off and then close your eyes. Calming music is good. Another thing you can do to help you sleep is if you go start reading, meaning turn off all the music and turn off all the electronic stuff that could interrupt your sleep. And if you start reading, particularly something that's incredibly boring, you'll go to sleep pretty quickly. So there's all kinds of things you can do here for sleep. My recommendation is to try any of those things first before you decide to take some prescription sleeping pills, because those can be dangerous if you get addicted to that kind of stuff. So I think that you may want to consider any of those things. Another thing I encourage you to do is if you're anxious, get someone to talk to. Either someone who's going to be understanding and listening and patient, or you may want to get some professional help. If you get someone to talk to with professional help, they can often give you hypnosis that's going to help you sleep better as well. So those are some ideas for your consideration.
Our final question, Dr. Perry, says this. For couples that want to build a strong relationship together, emerging from COVID-19 and be more together than ever before, what do you recommend?
Well, what I would say is the following. The biggest contribution to marriage failure is people who were, before they got married, people were courting. Now, you've heard me talk about this before, Mike. The reality is courtship behavior is one where both the man and the woman are really going the extra mile for each other. So that means when you're on your courtship, could we say, Mike, you're on your best behavior, and so is your wife or your wife to be? Could we
Yep,
say that? Okay.
definitely.
So, and Mike, you're on your best behavior because,
Oh, I want to make a good impression.
yeah. So could we say you look good, you smell good, you dress a little better, you stand a little taller, you're more funny, you're more reinforcing, you say more really lovely things to each other. And the last thing you ever want to be is indifferent or nasty or disrespectful or cynical or sarcastic or something. Is that right?
Correct. On all fronts.
So could we say the courtship is really a wonderful thing, and perhaps the single biggest reason that men and women actually decide let's get married, because they marry the courtship. Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, now here, this is a giant dose of common sense, Mike. If you want your relationship to get better, and now with COVID-19, because you have to be home together, it's entirely possible this is a perfect time to practice restoring the courtship. If you practice looking good and a little better groomed and a little better dressed and a little more affectionate, a little more reinforcing, a little more, let me tell you all the reasons why I think you're so terrific. The more you do courtship behavior for the life of your marriage, the more likely it is you're going to be some of those couples that are always holding hands and they always get such a kick out of each other. And they're the couples when one person finally dies, the other person seems to die shortly thereafter of a broken heart. That does in fact happen. And there's a fair amount of data that suggests it's more than coincidental that when a couple is really crazy about each other and finally one of them dies, then the other one follows in their footsteps shortly thereafter. And that's because those couples that were inseparable invariably practiced the courtship for the life of the marriage. This could be common sense. So if you really want to take advantage of COVID-19, because you got to be together, then my recommendation is restore that courtship and then keep doing the courtship. Love, care, regard, admiration, affection, closeness, extra mile, laughter, dancing, etc. What are your thoughts about that, Mike?
Thank you, Dr. Perry. I think that's wonderful information. For people listening, how can they connect with you again? Do you want to talk about our next event that's coming on Friday?
Yes. First, on Friday, we're going to be doing another topic. I'll be talking about it, and Mike will promote the subject matter for next Friday. And certainly, once again, you're more than welcome to give me comments, or you're more than welcome to give me suggestions, or you may want to ask more questions. So that will be on Friday at 9 o'clock. And we're doing this now on Tuesdays and Fridays for certainly the month of May and the month of June, and very possibly thereafter. So that's how you can tune in twice a week here on Dr. Perry Live. If you want to get more information, you simply go to our website, drjmperry@jmperry.com, or the website is jmperry.com. And I'm more than keen to have you get on our mail list. We do a monthly newsletter that's on a variety of subjects, and there's always something funny at the end, which I particularly like, because remember, there's a big connection between ha-ha and aha. You like that one, Mike?
Thank you very much, Dr. Perry. Thank you for all the viewers. For more information, you can visit jmperry.com.